Okay, welcome to Chapter 12. We finally get away from the command line and start writing normal, everyday, modern, graphical user interface, type of GUI applications. Hooray! Okay, now, unfortunately, before we start, there's a small tweak we have to do to the environmental variables. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to the control panel. I'm going to go to System, and then Advanced System Settings, and Environmental Variables. So the thing is, in the past, when you installed the standalone JRE, it built this thing called Java_home and pointed it to its location. We didn't do that at the beginning because it wasn't required, but it turns out now that we're getting ready to do some other stuff, then yeah, we need to add a new environmental variable called Java_home and point it to the location where our JDK is. Okay, so do that, and now we can begin. Okay, so kind of at the beginning, there's an awful lot of choices for graphical user interface with Java. The original one was called AWT, the Abstract Widget Toolkit. How's that for some cool name? In fact, the term widget kind of stuck around for quite some time. Swing is another one. There's a couple others called Pivot, and so we're using one called JavaFX. JavaFX is kind of sort of new. He's kind of the new kid on the block. He's also really probably the better of all of them. It's a little bit more modern. There's fairly complete and hardly anything that you'd be wanting. Okay, so a graphical user interface is you know what we're talking about, like our browser, anything that we don't have to work on the command line. Okay, cool. So on page 761, they talk about event-driven GUI applications. So when we were at the command line, the cursor just stopped on a line, and the only thing the machine was waiting for was for you to type on the keyboard, and that was it. It wasn't looking for mouse movement. It wasn't looking for anything other than the keyboard, because it was just a keyboard-only command line interface. That's not the way it works now. GUI programs listen to all sorts of things. They listen to the mouse moving across the screen. So, for example, I'm moving the mouse inside my browser window, and I'm generating a flood of something called an event. So whenever I move my mouse, an event is being fired, and this graphical user interface can interpret that and say, whoa, you just moved the mouse. So, moving a mouse or clicking on something or typing something, those are all events. And so event-driven is different than keyboard-driven, because keyboard only has one event, and event-driven is listening for all sorts of things that are happening, mostly related to the mouse, but not always. Okay, kind of makes sense? So, a GUI event-driven application is waiting for and quite frankly probably responding to a bunch of input events. So that's why this thing is called event-driven. Okay, on page 762 they talk about the introduction to JavaFX, and they use a metaphor from the theater. Now, I'm not saying this is something that actually makes a little bit of sense, but that's just what they did. So they have a stage, and so a stage is basically what, in the Windows world, what we would call a window, a stage. And then on the stage, you prepare a scene, and you put the scene in the window. And the scene can change, obviously, just like a real play. You can take a scene out, the curtain closes, you take that scene out and replace it with another scene, and the curtain opens back up, except we don't have curtains. Okay, so it kind of makes sense. A stage is the physical construct, like a window, and then the scene is what shows up inside that guy. Okay, so a stage typically has controls in it. Now, control is a kind of a more modern term. The older term, we would have called it a widget. But controls are things like button and text fields and labels and things of that nature. They also contain things called containers. And so a container really isn't designed to do anything. It's just designed to help you place things in a particular order. It's, it just kind of makes sense, like a plate. You put multiple foods on a plate. If you didn't have a plate, the food would just fall onto the table. Okay, so real honest to God controls plus containers. And scenes have a particular hierarchy involved. Let me bring up my little doodad here. And okay, so they're called nodes. Every time you have a container kind of a thing, it's called a node. So the root node is probably going to be the very first container you apply to a scene. And then all the rest of the nodes are subordinate to that. That's kind of sort of work. So some of the nodes are containers. Like, for example, for this to make any sense whatsoever, this root node has to be a container that contains, this could be a button, this could be a label, this could be another container which contains, a label and a text area or something like that. See how this kind of works? So it all kind of flows together. If I was to go here and delete this container, it would delete the things on the inside of the container too, right? I would lose those two leaf nodes. That kind of makes sense? Okay. So they talk about an application class on page 673. So to make this thing work, they just came up with a rule that basically said that all Java FX applications have to inherit from a class called application. Now, we've done inheritance before. And so inheritance is an abstract class, which means you absolutely, positively must inherit from it. And then as soon as you do that, it's going to complain and say, hey, you're missing a method, which is, hey, it's okay. And the method is called start. So you must inherit from application and override a method called start. Cool. So there's an example kind of sort of in the book that we're going to be going through. We're going to basically be building this guy. So this is how it's going to work. We're going to create an application. We're going to inherit from application. And then we're going to override this thing called start. Now, the stuff inside here we'll kind of sort of get to. All right, you guys ready? Now, here's where you're going to have to pay attention. So please pay attention. Up to now, we've always been doing file, new project, and we go to Java with Ant and we click that guy. Okay? That is not how we're doing it now. Instead, we're going to be doing something completely different from now on. So you have to pay attention. We're going to do Java with Maven. And then the simple Java FX Maven archetype. All right? I know this is a bit weird, but that's okay. You're going to have to pick these combinations. Java with Maven and simple Java FX. So I'm going to go through here. And I'm going to call this one Chapter 12. Okay, cool. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get started with this guy. Now, because we haven't run Maven and we haven't run Java FX, as soon as I hit this button, the machine's going to say, wait a minute, I'm missing a bunch of stuff. Okay. And so it's going to go get some stuff. Now, and depending on how fast your machine is, this might take a while. So just take a break, maybe a coffee break or something, and just wait. It's downloading a bunch of junk. And it said, build success. Great. So you must be thinking, okay, we're kind of sort of done. Well, you'd be wrong, because as soon as we run this thing for the first time, it's going to say, well, wait, I'm missing some more stuff, and it's going to download even more stuff. So without even looking at what this thing is, I'm just going to run it, okay? So here we go. I'm just going to hit run, and it's going to say, hang on a second, I'm missing some stuff. And we wait. thankfully, all this waiting only happens once, okay? Once you've been through it one time, the next time you create a Java FX application, it goes pretty doggone smoothly. Yay! And a traditional Windows-looking window, and it says, "Hello, Java FX version 13 running on Java 14. Hooray!" Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop my application. Boom. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it look like the example in the book. Okay, so I'm going to go in there and make a few changes. So I'm going to extend these things out. I'm going to go to source packages. Now this is a little confusing. There's something in the default package, but quite frankly, I'm just going to ignore that for the time being and keep going for where it says Chapter 12. Now in their thing, I'm going to go ahead and bring this guy up. In their thing, they have a bunch of other stuff. And quite frankly, I just want to make it match what they have in the example, so I'm not going to do that. What I'm basically going to do is I'm going to delete all this kind of extra stuff that they put in there. They have a little thing that finds out what the version of Java and the version of FX and displays it on the screen. So I'm just going to delete that. And I'm also going to delete this class because I don't need it anymore because that was just the one that kind of came with it. Okay, so now, now that I got that, now it more closely, it most closely looks like the example in the book, most closely. Okay, so what they did is they just have a primary stage, okay, and they don't really have any type of scene in there at all yet, okay? So just to make mine match exactly theirs, I'm basically going to comment these guys out. Well, maybe I'll just take them out. Yeah, what the heck, I'll just take them out. Okay, so now that pretty much well looks like this. They're doing a title, and then that. Okay, fine, that's what I'll do. I'll do set title. So I go here and I say stage set title, and mine's gonna say Chapter 12. Okay, so now I'm gonna run this, and it's just gonna be it's not gonna have any content at all. It's just gonna be a naked window with a title across the top. That's it. Okay, now that's not normally the way applications look because there's always some content in here. Cool, but I'm matching what they got in the book. Kind of makes sense? Okay. Okay, so next we're going to be adding some controls. But to tell you the truth, this is a little confusing because I talked about containers and controls. You're going to have to build the controls first and then build the container. I know this doesn't make any sense, but just bear with me. I promise it will. So I'm going to build a thing called a label. And I'm just going to call it, I don't know, LB, name. And it's going to be equal to new label. Enter your name. Okay, as you can probably imagine, I've got quite a lot of red squigglies where oh, cool, I don't. Normally it would have asked me to add some more stuff into here, but apparently this one was already there. So then let's go ahead and do one called label. I'm going to do a thing called a text field. Okay, not label, a text field. A text field. And I'm going to call this one TF name. And it's going to be equal to a new text field. Okay, now this one, of course, is going to light up and say, hey man, I need some more imports. Okay, so I built me a label and I built me a control. So what I need to do now is put them in a container. And we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, so we'll complete this in just a minute.